Yeah, I thought maybe I was going to be posted to Ibadan or
Yeah.
Abeokuta or somewhere like that. And then they sent me to a rural town south of Kano. So
Wow.
I got traded in a political deal. Is what happened. They traded 5 high school math teachers to the north for one PhD math teacher for the University of Ibadan.
Oh wow. That sounds like an interesting deal. I'm not surprised. My parents my parents live in Ibadan currently.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It must have changed a lot in the last 55 years, though. Amazing
It
changes.
has. It
Yeah.
has. Even Kano. So I hope that besides this conversation we can talk some more. You certainly would want to visit again.
It's the decisions continued violence in the area for decades, seems like. So really.
Yes.
Anyway.
Okay, well, I want to say good morning, everybody, and certainly a very hearty welcome to Ms. Tolu, who is with us for the first time. We're going to give her a word to kind of give a thumbnail description of who she is in just a minute. But since we're living through such extraordinary times, we want to take a moment of meditation, prayer, silent for the victims of the COVID, and certainly for George Floyd and his family. And we want to just have a solidarity moment for about 30 seconds or 45 seconds to start with. Amen, Ashe. I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. I think we are in progress of having a stunning presentation this morning. Bob, we've gotten some high ratings on your presentation, and I think that you shared some of your supporting work with some of the members of For a More Perfect Union. Our millennial, Miss Evita is not here this morning, so we do want to try to recultivate that effort to find out what's happening to make sure that she is involved with future telephone calls, and we have been communicating through the week. But we'll try to recultivate our contacts, till our fields, and hopefully we can get everybody back on. So Sherra, I'm hoping that before you start, let's ask Miss Tolu, who has impeccable credentials, and I met her as a co-worker, to tell us a little bit more about yourself other than your Yoruba genealogy. So Ms. Tolu, are you there?
Mr. Omowale, you kind of broke off for a little bit there, but I don't know if everyone can hear me.
I can.
I can.
Yeah, we wanted you to, okay, I'm gonna have to get Ms. Brandley because evidently we having some problems hearing you. So let me let Ms. Brandley know that we having some problems. Can you hear me, Ms. Tolu? Ms. Tolu, can you hear me? No, I think it's something problematical with her mic.
Mr. Omowale, I'm on and I'm listening in, but I don't think that it is something far as her mic is on.
Okay.
Okay, can everyone hear me? I think I lost you all for a second there.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear.
Okay,
Okay.
well, thank you. So, Ms. Tolu, what I had just indicated, you have impeccable credentials. Certainly would be a great addition to this group. But we wanted you to maybe just give us a quick thumbnail description as to who you are, maybe in 2 minutes or less, and then we're going to yield the floor to Sherra.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again for just the opportunity to join this impeccable group. I look forward to just learning more. But in 1 minute or less, my name is Tolu Olumuyiwa. Dawodu was my
We went dead again, didn't we?
Yeah.
Ms. Tolu, it's a problem with the mic, I think. Ms. Tolu, are you still there?
Sometimes when this happens, if she calls back in, she'll get a different connection or something.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna type into the chat for please call back in, Ms. Tolu.
Okay. I'll call back in.
No,
Sorry about
okay. Now, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Bob says something.
Well, hello.
Nancy
I
said,
can hear.
Sherra, can you say something?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay. Well, okay, we can hear you now. So, Ms. Tolu, give us that description. God damn it. Went dead again, didn't it?
Yeah.
Stupid.
She
Okay.
may to call back in like
Yeah.
you guys were saying.
Okay. Okay, so good. Well, let's go ahead and yield to you and tell us about your presentation today. Is it going to be a lifestyle presentation based upon the book that you're going to do?
Yes, not really based on the book per se, but kind of, it's really talking about the intersection of kind of the challenges we have with our health, our human health, health of our communities, our own personal health, and the climate crisis that we're facing. So it's kind of where the two intersect. So that's what, and what can we do? What's the most powerful thing we can do now?
Okay, so you have until about, I would think about to 11:40, 11:45. We're gonna leave a little time for questions and then we'll clear the path for next week.
Okay, so let me pull it up here and I will need to, I guess, take over the screen.
Okay.
So let me do a share screen, see if that works. Can you guys see?
Thanks, Gail. You know, it really is important. It's a record.
Are you able to share it?
Okay. Can you see it?
We see it now.
Okay, great. So hold on, let me do that. Okay, so can everybody see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Again, I am working on a book mainly about my experience in reversing the symptoms of heart disease, which really runs in both sides of my family. And in doing that with basically changing how I eat, giving up animal products was the main cause. And that was basically following the advice of leading cardiologists like Caldwell Esselstyn and Dean Ornish and others. They were the guys who were the doctors that got Bill Clinton off hamburgers. But the power of regeneration in our bodies is also mirrored by the potential and power of regeneration in our natural environment. So there are a lot of parallels between what we do to take care of ourselves and what we can do to take care of the environment. So the subtitle is Our Food Economy versus Human and Environmental Health. And obviously we all like to think of food and the food producers as helping our health, and they certainly do in many ways, but as the food production has become more corporate and more concentrated, there's actually a disconnect. So to go to the next slide, maybe I need to, is part of the slide hidden by the pictures of the group? Or can you see the entire slide?
I can see the entire slide.
I
Oh,
can't.
okay. So it's only hidden for me. So I'm going to minimize that. Okay. All right. So where are we now? And let me put my timer on so that I look that. But so where we are now is, again, we have a convergence. It's kind of like a perfect storm, a convergence of factors that have been accelerating for a long time, certainly for decades and even for beyond, for even longer. So on the health side of kind of our dilemma, we have corporate food, concentrated food production, big corporate producers who basically exist, any corporation exists for one purpose, and that is to provide shareholder value. It is to be profitable and to, under our current economic system, basically growth is the method to do that. So it's constant growth, it's unfettered growth, it's big capitalism. So at this point, we'll talk a little bit about how that doesn't serve us well and how that's actually driving both the health and the environmental crisis. We've got growing diet and lifestyle disease epidemics. We have a model of healthcare that is based on basically managing diseases through drugs and surgeries and not curing any of them. Particularly, we're talking about the lifestyle diseases that are affecting most of us and our families and our communities. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. We've got declining healthcare access. And we all know the political struggles we've had about that, and the fact that we don't have as good a healthcare system as many places in the world that have a more socialized system. And then we have the economic exploitation of minority and working class communities, and that's an ongoing issue. On the environmental side, you have corporate factory farming of animals and in what they call concentrated animal feeding operations. It's the second highest producer of greenhouse gases. That was a surprise to me. I only realized that 2 years ago. I mean, I came at this from a human health perspective. To learn that the same standard American diet, what's become standard, that is compromising human health, is also accelerating climate change. There's some background noise. I don't know if somebody could maybe mute. And then there's basically the pollution that comes from the food industry in the form of antibiotics, animal concentrated production facilities use more antibiotics. They're the biggest customer of antibiotics. They're much more than are used for human use. Pesticides, nitrogen fertilizers, genetically modified organisms, all of these things pollute our environment. Monoculture or one crop farming, which is what big agriculture does, depletes soil and inhibits biodiversity, which produces healthy soils. Food transportation and refrigeration, which are also big causes, big drivers of global warming. The food industry plays very heavily in those. So that even makes its impact higher. Oops, trying to change slides. Okay, so let's first focus on health. Again, that's kind of my entry point into how these two things relate. And my own personal experience has been really transformational, I could say, in the sense that I live now more thankful for the health that I have, and also more grateful for the fact that I was able to do this by doing something also that's, not just healthy for me, that's a compassionate way of living, in terms of trying to also end the normalized violence of animal abuse, particularly food animals. So I would just ask you to think for a minute. I don't know that you guys, I can't see you guys at this point, but just think for a minute, raise your hand if you're visible on the screen. Is there anybody on the call that doesn't know at least one family, friend, or colleague that isn't dealing with one of these issues? And in many cases, we're dealing with more than one. Is there anybody out there, I think we can all hear each other, that that doesn't know somebody or does not have a family member or somebody that that's dealing with these? And I would venture to say that every time I've asked that question to people, everybody knows somebody. And a lot of the times people are dealing with more than one. So the number one killer of all causes of death, that includes natural disasters, car accidents, wars, whatever, in this country is heart disease, and actually worldwide is heart disease. In the US, it affects 48%. So almost half of us have some form of it, whether it's hypertension or cardiovascular disease. There's all different forms, but 48%. Cancer is still the number two killer. And one troubling trend is that the gap is widening between basically the haves and the have-nots in our country. The poor, minority communities, et cetera, are actually now falling behind in terms of preventing cancers that could be prevented by lifestyle and diet. Stroke is the fifth cause of death. African Americans have the highest death rate. This may surprise people. Alzheimer's is the number 6 cause of death, and it is the cause for 1 out of every 3 seniors. And it's also related to diet and lifestyle very strongly. All of these diseases are related to diet. These are all preventable diseases. Diabetes affects about 45% of our population when you include the pre-diabetics. Just a footnote, 42% of Americans are now obese, which fuels all of these diseases and others. And that is a function not of people not, knowing what to eat or not exercising enough. This is a function of the food system. And it affects, like everything else, people at the lower end of the economic scale who don't have who have to buy cheap stuff. And cheap stuff is the stuff that's processed and that is engineered to be addictive. And the R&D budgets for those big food companies, they spend millions of dollars trying to figure out how to make foods addictive because it drives profits. It's not because they're bad people. They're just trying to meet their numbers. Okay, so big food versus public interest. I think that says a lot of it. But basically, the concentration of food production means that now corporations control what we eat. It's led to the loss of the whole small farming sector of our economy. They've either been driven out of business or just could not compete. And it certainly has fueled the diet-related diseases and environmental issues. Examples, 4 companies control 80% of cereal sales, and I know you know those 2 brands that you see. And this was another, I tried to pick examples that may not be so well known. 9 out of 10 chickens, you know how much chicken we kill billions of chickens a year in this country. 90% are now grown by what are called contract producers. These are people who used to be small farmers. 75% of them live below the poverty line. This is the real cost of corporate food. So the real cost of cheap food also is the cost of healthcare that keeps going up and up and up. It's the cost of the environmental degradation. And the food companies don't bear those costs. They reap the profits, but we pay for healthcare, you know, for our communities. We pay for our governments, our cities, our governments have to pay for remediation of pollution that's caused in the environment when they can't get the polluter to do it. So all of these products of our food system make the real cost of cheap food not cheap at all. And on top of that, you have the lobbyists, food lobbyists spend about 30 million a year in Congress. And just to put the FDA in perspective, even if the FDA had the will to effectively police food safety, and quite frankly, that will ebbs and flows. It's at an all-time low now because even before now, it's not just a recent thing. The FDA leadership typically comes from the food industry. Once people leave the food industry, that's where they go, and they bring with them the same agenda. But General Mills' budget, just for, not their whole budget, just their budget for research and development to come up with these foods that are cheap and that people can afford, the masses of people can afford, just their one budget, it exceeds the entire FDA budget to oversee the whole industry. So let's look at the healthcare side of it. Obviously, technology has done a lot, but despite that, and technology is important. You know, we need our healthcare system. We need it to be efficient. But access to quality care has actually decreased. And some examples, the number of hospitals in the US has dropped by more than 1,000 since 1980. The number of inpatient admissions per 1,000 population has been falling for 25 years. And that could be good or bad. You know, maybe if people were healthier, that would be a good thing, but they're not. Employer-based healthcare coverage declined basically 9% from 69 to 60% from 2018 to 2000. And we know the conservative agenda continues to push and has historically pushed cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. So, and with the COVID, you know, economic situation, there are really aggressive cuts to Medicaid right now. I think 3 states have already cut drastically. One of them is Ohio. I think one might have been Florida. But basically, COVID has exposed the weaknesses in our medical system. It didn't create them; they were there, but it kind of put them out there for all of us to see. Okay, let's switch to the environmental side. Corporate, it's the same theme, corporate profit versus public. And I remember someone on the call before Bob's, when we were talking about Bob's presentation before he did it, said, well, if we know all of this, we know climate change is our biggest, you know, threat. What are the forces, or why are we not doing something about it? So this has inspired this slide. Corporate interest. Again, corporations are not there to save the environment. They're there to use the environment to create profits. They're there for shareholder return. They're there to fulfill basically a strategy for unlimited growth. I mean, we have a growth economic model, and not just in the US, but in the world, but you know, we kind of are at the forefront of that. And that includes unlimited exploitation of natural and national resources. And they enjoy government influence, protection, and subsidies. And that's a big part of their business model. the impact on us, the public, is the problems that we have: polluted air and water and soil, all the severe weather incidents and events that we're beginning to experience. Basically, that includes, particularly in the Houston area, threats to life and property from sea level rise. We all have seen the stories where people who built these, beautiful homes on the coastline are now having to retreat from that because they can't get insurance. We have a food supply that's compromised, more so than probably, I would say, anywhere in the world. I know Europe's food supply has much better protections for food safety than here. We're now starting to look at pandemics and food insecurity in a different way. Food insecurity has always been there for the working poor and for many of people on the low end of the socioeconomic scale. But now with the pandemics, the prospects are for greater food insecurity, and not just for that segment of our population. And then we have the loss of biodiversity and species extinction, which is another problem, and actually into this transfer of diseases, viruses from animals to people. So Bob talked about this last time, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It's really important, though, because agriculture, if you look at the pie chart, is the second highest cause for global warming. I'm going to say that again. Bob said it last week. Agriculture is the second highest cause for global warming and climate change. And it's second only to energy production, electricity and heat. And it's only by 1 percentage point. The point I will make here is that many environmentalists make the argument that it's actually number one. And they make that argument because of agriculture's impact on transportation. Because think about it, when right now we have food that is produced by, 90% of our food comes from the big producers. Well, it has to be distributed across the country and across the world. And that adds to the carbon footprint in the transportation sector. And think about all the energy that's used in food production. So the case can be made and is being made that it's actually our biggest leverage point to do something about global warming. So again, back to the convergence. How do these things come together and what can we do about it? I first want to make the point that our most vulnerable populations are always the first to feel the effects. So climate change will make all the health conditions that we're talking about more challenging. Hospitals will be even more challenged than they are now. Societal inequities will be also exacerbated. And again, the poor and working families will be the first and hardest hit. So that includes diet-related and viral diseases. We've seen how COVID has had a more detrimental and deadly effect on the African-American community, and that's because of our diet-related diseases that we already have, and also the historical lack of equal access to healthcare, and just lack of access to resources to try to put good food on our tables. Weather disasters, again, we're seeing those increase in intensity and frequency. Clean water access will be an issue. Economic disruptions, we're seeing that now. Food supply disruptions, we will see that more. So this is not sustainable. We know this. We all know that this is not sustainable at all. On the food side, it's not sustainable. With diabetes, heart disease increasing exponentially over the years, with no solution from the medical establishment, the medical industry, to solve those problems, because they know it's food, but you know, they're not gonna attack that, because that's not their business model. Their business model is to provide intervention, not prevention. So major change will come if we act. The good news is we have more power than what we realize. And major change will come if we act. And we must act in a variety of ways. Certainly the purpose of this group showcases that, because we're talking about how can we mobilize the grassroots to go out and vote, to make sure that we get people in government who will listen to us as we push and pressure them to do the things that they won't do on their own, whether they're Democrat or Republican. They won't do it because they're tied to big industry. They're tied to corporate donors. But we need people that we can influence, who care about our vote. So that's one way. The people who are in the streets, that's really important. They need to keep the pressure on. There's all kinds of ways that we need to contribute. But major change will come if we act. It will also come if we don't act, but it'll be different. And we have the opportunity to influence what that looks like for our kids, for our grandkids, for ourselves, for our communities. So the big question is, where's the highest leverage point? What is it we can do now? What is it we don't need a bill to be passed to do? What is it we don't need to go out and make a big investment in, you know, a hybrid car to do, or solar panels to do? Although all those things are really important, and we need to do as many of them as we can. But we're looking for what can we do now, and that's from my perspective at looking at the relationship between human health and environmental health. That's where the focus is for me. So the Oxford study, which was to date the biggest analysis about the impact of agriculture on climate. So basically the conclusion from the study is what the headline says on the slide. Avoiding meat and dairy is the single biggest way to impact climate change. So why is that true? Or why do these scientists say that's true? The biggest analysis to date, which was this Oxford study, it's not the only one, it's just the biggest one, talks about within the within the agricultural economy, it's really livestock. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to go we're trying to narrow down where is it we can have the most impact. Livestock provides just 18% of the calories that human beings need for energy, for life, but it takes up 83% of farmland. I can't think of a more inefficient use of natural resources. Point two, if we just reduce basically meat and dairy consumption to a significant enough extent, global farmland use would shrink by more than 75%. Why is that important? That's important because trees are being cleared globally and here to make more pasture land, more grazing land, like the picture you see there. That's actually from the Amazon. And this is a picture of illegal, which is, happens all the time in the Amazon. You have animal grazing that's happening illegally. If we could.
It's happening now.
Hello?
Oh.
I don't know if
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought I was on mute. I was talking to my phone.
No problem. So I actually thought it was my echo or something. But
I'm so sorry. I'm put myself on mute. I'm here. I'm listening.
No problem. So basically, if we could reduce meat and dairy consumption, we could shrink global farmland use by more than 75%. And that is the equivalent, to give you a visual, of the whole land mass of the US, China, European Union, and Australia combined. And just allowing that land to regenerate and forest. The earth is going to be around long after we're gone, or, you know, hopefully we'll evolve into something that is more in tune with living in harmony with our fellow earthlings, you know, animal, human, and all of the above. But the earth will regenerate. So how can we help it regenerate? So that is by allowing basically the land that's used now, the 83% of farmland that's used for particularly livestock production, to regenerate. And it regenerates at an amazing rate. And there are stories about how quickly it can regenerate. And that gives us great opportunity and great hope. So basically, I'm going to skip through the other things. I will skip the point about extinction because I mentioned that earlier. But I do want to say, because it's really important, there's a movement now that's pushing regenerative agriculture, particularly as it relates to animal meat production. And yes, it is definitely more humane. And yes, even I say that if we're going to buy meat and dairy, we should buy it from small producers. But if on a scientific level and on a macro level, the reason corporations do it the way they do it is because to meet the demand that they've created, you can't have cows grazing in pastures like what you see. The problem would get exponentially worse. If we tried to eat the same amount of it that we've grown accustomed to because of factory farming, it would make it would not solve the problem. It would actually take the problem in the wrong direction. And the lowest impact meat and dairy products that are produced still cause more harm than the least sustainable vegetable products. Okay, why us? I tried to do a play on us in US, so why us here? The US continues to emit exponentially more greenhouse gas emissions per person than any other country for the last 100 years. And last week, Bob shared with us how, checking my time, how Texas emits more than anybody in the US. There may have been one state close, Pennsylvania or something, but and more than any other country. The Texas emits more per person than any country in the world. So we are in, as we used to call in the 60s, Omowale will remember this, in the civil rights movement, we talked about being in the belly of the beast. We're literally in the belly of the beast once again, when it comes to the opportunity we have from where we sit to make a difference. And we have with that opportunity a responsibility to lead by action, even when our government does not, because the government will not get us out of this. The corporations will not get us out of this. Their interests are compromised. So government will only do it when we make it, when we take away the option not to do it. So good news, the number of US consumers that call themselves vegan grew basically 600% between 2014 and 2017, according to Forbes magazine. And millennials are driving that change. That is the good news. And we're talking about millennials globally are driving that change. So how do we do it? And this gets back to what's near and dear to my heart, literally my heart, because I give this credit for why I have the health that I have today. We eliminate, and the real focus is on eliminating meat and dairy, but to be realistic, because not everybody will do that. Those of us who understand the bigger implications of it, I'm hoping now we'll have more than one reason to do it, actually 2 or 3 reasons to do it. But, and you don't have to do it all at once. So some people do things when they make up their mind, they see something, they're gonna just do it. Most of us do it over time. I did it over time. I did it over 30 years. And you know, so eliminate is the emphasis to get the impacts on the climate that we need, and also to get the health impacts that we need, particularly if we're trying to reverse a disease, which all of the diseases that I talked about common cancers and all those things that are at the bottom of the page here are not only preventable, but reversible. You certainly can make a big difference with your health by doing what? Number one, enjoy. Have fun with your food. Eat real food. I'm not talking about fake food. I'm talking about food that comes from plants. And that includes milks, cheeses. There's protein in every plant, so don't buy into the notion that the meat industry has successfully, and the lobbyists have successfully got in every food chart that you need protein for meat. You absolutely do not. There's protein in every single plant. There's not a plant that doesn't have it. They're not complete proteins, but the way we eat, we don't just eat one plant. When you eat a variety of foods, you get all the protein you need. And you don't suffer from the excessive protein, which is inflammatory, which leads to all the diseases at the bottom of the page. Increase your vegetable intake. Enjoy. I mean, fruits, vegetables, seasonal fruits and vegetables, particularly because they're affordable. They're the things that grow in our area, and they're matched to our own physiology. But grains, you know, beans, seeds, nuts, there's literally thousands of varieties of vegetables, fruits, seeds, nuts, grains that we can enjoy. And there's an infinite number of ways that we can enjoy them. And of course, buying local is important, and also from responsible producers. 1148, so avoid processed packaged foods. This is so important. This is why poor people, you know, get obese, and this is why all of us, you know, get sick if we eat too much of this stuff. And the worst of it is the stuff that's labeled health, you know, healthy, low fat, blah, blah, blah. And also the products that have like all these long ingredients and more than a handful of them. Avoid it, just stay away from it. There's a political reason to stay away from it, because Kellogg's and General Mills, that control 80% of the cereal production, also own a lot of these labels. And yeah, it's good for us to show them that these are important to us, but we're also feeding a company that will drop all of that, you know, if the money goes somewhere else. And for our own health, reduce sugar, salt, and fat intake, and getting away from processed foods is the best way to do that. So get most of your sugar from whole foods, limit all processed sugars, get your fat from whole foods, eat the nuts, eat the seeds, don't eat the processed oil. So that's kind of how you do it in a nutshell. Environment, how do we do it? Again, it's the same answer. Eliminate meat and dairy, or limit it if you can't eliminate it, or if that's a path toward your eliminating it. If you do consume it, buy it from a local, ethical, small farmer. Boycott, absolutely boycott supermarket meat. 99% of it is factory farm, regardless of labeling. Remember that. Don't go for the marketing. Vote with your fork and your wallet to drive down demand. This is what we're talking about. That is how you will get corporate response. That is how you will get response from government when we decrease the demand for these products. Organic foods, as an example, is now the fastest growing industry segment. And that wasn't because there was a law passed that said, you know, we had to eat organic. It was because consumers demanded it, and it's a grounds up approach. The effect of that, and going back to the Oxford study, allowing just 41% of the land that has been cleared for cattle production, cleared of trees that absorb the greenhouse gases and clean the air, would basically allow those lands to regenerate, and would have a greater impact than basically driving a what am I trying to say, hybrid car, a Prius. I mean, it has more impact than that. We would reclaim nearly 1/3 of the world's supply of clean water that's used in animal farming. It takes 1,800 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of beef. And as clear water, clean water becomes more scarce, again, we can do something now to have the biggest impact to stop that from happening. We would also stop species extinction, which is also important. Okay, to conclude, for me, this is really about living more fully. It's about being connected to all life, all human life, whether that be human or animal, and certainly with the human spectrum, it certainly supports not drawing barriers where we say that, you know, my group is the group that's privileged or right. And, you know, I'm different from you, I'm different from that person. It's a reconnection with our internal environment, with our external environment. I mean, actually, our human bodies are basically energy fields. The separation between us and the tree and the bird are superficial. So I love this quote from Alice Walker. I don't know if you've heard it before, but the animals of the world exist for their own reasons. They were not made for humans any more than Black people were made for white or women made for men. And that was from The Color Purple. So to basically put it all together, what we can do to increase compassion, to decrease the normalized violence that exists in our society, particularly in the US, but in our society in general. And that's normalized violence against people and normalized violence against other life forms, the animals that have a right to be here just as we do and to have a good animal life. Find meat substitutes you enjoy, be adventurous. Look at this as you're not going to give up something that you're not going to gain more in return from. Choose meat-free items in restaurants. Feed yourself mindfully, with intention and with joy. Follow your heart. Again, what will this do for us? Cutting US consumption by just 50%, consumption of animals, would save nearly 28 billion animal lives per year. That's how many animals we kill annually in this country. Would have a major impact on slowing and reversing environmental damage, and would have a major effect, and I can speak from my own experience, in improving our health, improving our quality of life, improving our connection to nature and to each other. So I have some books here that I wanted to share with you that I've really enjoyed. One of the most unique and interesting is Carbon Yoga. I mean, the name even got my interest, but I met Salish Rao at an event at Rice last year. It was a vegan event, and I was, you know, taken by his science and his study. He's actually a systems engineer turned climate activist. So there are also diseases about, if you want to reverse heart disease or other lifestyle diseases, the book by Joel Furman is a good one. There's many others. Tracy McWhorter is an African-American woman who's launched a 10,000 Black women vegan campaign that she's doing now. She's been in the space for a couple of decades at least. And the last is some films that I think some of you have probably seen, others of you may not have, but I think there's nothing like seeing kind of how our food system works from the inside out to really open your mind and heart to another alternative. And I apologize for going too long, but that is my presentation. I don't know if I put everybody to sleep.
No.
So Sherra, we want to give you just some deep thanks. I think that we have been enriched, edified beyond belief this morning by your presentation. I'm hoping there's some way that we can share the brilliance of what it is that you just presented us with. I'm trying to look at the time. It's 11:56. How many people can stay maybe 10 minutes over?
I can.
Okay. Well, if we can stay 10 minutes over, that'll be about, let's say 12:10 or 12:12. We're trying not to go beyond that. Let's take the next 5 to 7 minutes for feedback, questions, comments with Sherra.
Well, I could say something. I really liked your presentation. It was really good and had some interesting things in it that I didn't know. I wanted to add a few things, though, about some of the consequences of this crazy food system we have. One of them is that we import an awful lot of food to this country from other places. Mainly because the labor is super cheap in places. I've read that in Mexico, for example, people get paid 80 cents an hour to work on farms. And labor, even in the United States on farms, is below minimum wage. And that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is that it's rather difficult to ship fresh produce 3,000 miles or 6,000 miles and have it edible. It's not an easy thing to do. So they tend to work with the 2 or 3 varieties of anything that will actually ship and not squash or rot before it gets to market. So that the long distance food trade, what it does is put a high value in terms of anything that has a stable shelf life. And meat has a much more stable shelf life than lots of other things do. And the other piece of it is that one way to deal with that is take relatively bad produce, stick it in a can, add some salt, sugar, or fat to it, or all of those things, and serve it as a jelly donut somewhere. And so basically, all those diseases you were talking about is partly the consequence of the fact that we don't produce food locally, or not enough of it anyway. And part of the consequence of that is that people who might not want or be able to have a desk job do not have job opportunities. So unemployment is a problem, especially for people without college degrees and things like that. And that's partly because it's the wages in farm labor close to someplace like Houston. It's very hard for somebody to compete with 80 cents an hour, 7 hours south of here in Mexico. And the reason that labor is so cheap in Mexico is U.S. has driven down the cost of the peso over years. So pesos are now, I don't know what they are, 40 to 1 or some crazy amount. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that poor people on the rest of the planet are shoveling food to here rather than growing it for their own people. And they're doing that to undercut possible labor prices here for farming, which is why we have what we have. Anyway, the other side of that is that diabetes and all those other diseases are messing around with particularly older people who are caretakers and babysitters and sources of income for families. And that affects in major ways, especially in single parent families, the opportunity to take care of children and to participate in the workforce. Anyway, it's a mess. I've been talking too long, but yeah. I just wanted to add that. So all this difficulties of people trying to have a residence to stick in an apartment for any length of time and let the kids go to one school, for example. All of that is also related to these diseases.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anybody else have observation, comment?
I had two questions, but neither, I mean, not both of them. Well, thank you for such an outstanding presentation. That was so like moving and like stirred me. So the first question is about, and I guess they're kind of tied. So I'm thinking about like American like individualism as it relates to activism, and like we like make the decisions with our wallets and with our choices, and how that like other models of collective action and maybe and like the coexistence there. And I'm wondering if like other nations have examples, like have models for showing how like collective grassroots like consumer activism can lead to change. Yeah.
Hey, Viva, before she answers that question, who is that bearded man behind
That's
you?
my
Okay, all right.
Himself.
Oh my God, Dad, be quiet. Okay.
Are you in Boston or Houston?
I'm in Houston.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right then. Okay.
No, thank you for that, because, you know, I don't have a quick answer at all for it. But what I will say is that all of the above are important. I tried to make that point. It's not just one thing. We're in a situation where we need to attack these problems, and they're interrelated. We need to find ways to attack these problems from all different angles. And so what I learned basically from the whole 60s movement is that you need your Martin Luther Kings, but you also need your H. Rap Browns. You know, you need people who are in the streets, but you also need people who are working, you know, trying to build coalitions in Congress. You know, you need all of the above. You need grassroots community groups, because at the end of the day, none of this change will happen if we don't create the demand for it. If we don't push from the bottom up, none of it will happen. And are there models in other countries? There are actually models here. There's some organizations here. I'll try to put together some information, some names of organizations, even here in the US, that are working on these issues. And there are some really good ones that are.
Thank you. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. So, Sherra, somebody has requested your bibliography. Are you going to share that?
You mean the presentation?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Actually, Omowale, I sent it to you right before.
Okay. Yeah. And let me say that a few people have been sending me some very profound articles related to For a More Perfect Union, and asking if they have permission to share that with the group. So going forward, you can bypass me. Just go ahead. So you have the liberty to share that with the group anytime that you want. You don't need to ask me for permission to share that. So Sherra, that might be another application that we might think of, because this has been so profound. I'm thinking with some of the millennials that maybe we have access to, I think that they would benefit by having an exchange, more or less of a dialogue. I don't know if it'll be in the same format that we do here, but so I'm just letting you know that we will be thinking of some other ways where we can get a wider extension of the kind of ideas that you have presented with us today. So in closing, on your presentation, if anybody else wants to say thank you, you're certainly welcome to, but I said really thank you.
Thank you guys for allowing me to do it.
It was excellent. I really enjoyed it. I caught it late, but I am very interested. This is Claire. I'm very interested in, did you include the organizations, the advocacy groups that are locally in what you sent, Mr. Omowale?
No, that wasn't part of the presentation. It was a response to the question, but I will put that together. The ones that I know, and others know. I know Omowale has introduced me to some. What was the? Was it? What is it? Sustainable Harvest. What is the organization that does the local vegetable gardens?
Yeah. Yes. Bob.
It's Urban Harvest.
Urban Harvest. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was a founding ED of Urban Harvest. So.
Oh, wow. Well, Bob, can you help us with local organizations and that you may know too?
Well, yes. Urban Harvest has been one of the main ones, and there are a lot of different versions of that. There's Planet Forward Farms, which is sort of a spin-off of Urban Harvest, of basically training mostly Congolese refugees and other refugees from Africa. Mostly they don't speak very good English, and they're refugees here, and they've been helping them learn farming and making a living selling food in urban Houston. A lot of it came out of St. Thomas University or Catholic Justice stuff.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
look.
that is a good one.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. Also, you're going to receive a document which is basically going to be extracting some information from you to give people some portrait of who you are in a warm, up close and personal way. So we're going to be asking for a few things like, what is your greatest fear? What is your greatest accomplishment? What is left on your bucket list? The kind of most exciting, adventurous experiences and places that you have visited or participated in, the kinds of historical events. It's not going to be anything that's real, that's going to embarrass you. Let me say it like that. Okay. But at any rate, if it's a little bit too personal, you can skip that. But we will send that document out, and we appreciate if you will fill that out. I'm going to ask that for our next week. When I said next week, the next time we gather, and hopefully that will be 2 weeks from now, unless we have something more compelling. I'm thinking that we could make sure that we get the best content available in terms of the kinds of reforms that are going to be necessary in the wake of the Big Floyd murder. And we maybe can say a few things that are necessary for local reform here in Houston and how we might weigh in. And also, I'm going to ask Ms. Brantley, or one of us will send you a document out that will speak to the possibility that democracy can go dark around the 2020 election through some extraordinary measures that are available at the executive level, and how citizens can be proactive in trying to prevent democracy from going dark. And we can have a discussion about that on the 27th. Does anybody have any quick response to prevent democracy from going dark discussion on the 27th?
Hey, I think we need it.
Okay. Well, nobody said that that's far-fetched. I thought somebody might say that that's unthinkable in one of the freest countries in the world. So it means that it might be appropriate. So we will be trying to put something together. I'm going to say in closing, certainly peace, healing, reconciliation, that the mourning process, the grief process will come to completion with the George Floyd family and all of us who are mourning. And we are moving towards some, if we're at an inflection point now, we might be moving towards some tipping or transformation point, which we can talk about on next week, and we can bring our networks in on this. So Ms. Tolu has left the line. She will be back with us. I think that Ms. Tolu indicated that her specialty is in global health. I didn't know that she is very sagacious when it comes to epidemiological issues, and she understands the epidemic factor from her training very well. So we hope to have Ms. Tolu back, and she can help us out. And so, Claire, we also are very aware of
I'm still here, Mr. Omowale. Sorry
Oh,
to interrupt you.
oh, okay, okay, good. So, Ms. Tolu, I was just saying that it seems like your global health emphasis and experience, that you might have some very sagacious feedback for us going forward. So we are looking forward to giving your feedback on these matters.
All right, sir.
Okay,
Certainly.
okay, good. She always says, all right, sir, and that's been the same way that she's been since we met her. I'm hoping that some of your courtesy can I know how you training your kids. I'm hoping that you can help us training some of our kids and grandkids to relate to the elders in the way that you relate to the elders. I'm saying that I very much appreciate the way that you relate to me and the other elders. So if we would stay tuned, Ms. Brandon, we want to thank you. I don't know if you have anything that you want to say, but she's our host. And so our next gathering will be on the 27th, same time, same station.
Thank you.
May the force be with everybody. And Sherra has a daughter that's getting hitched up today, all right?
It's tomorrow.
Oh, it's tomorrow. Okay. Yep. So we're going to say may the force be with her and her.
Virtually.
Yes, virtually. Yes, yes. Okay, all right then. So observe the precautions, and God's willing, we'll all be back together on the 27th. Same time, same station. In the meanwhile, all of us know how to get in touch with each other. And we'll stay tuned. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.